So, Mr. Nazur,
What's going on?
what is going on out there in the rates market, in the mortgage market there?
It's getting better, like we said it would.
Yeah.
No, it really is getting better. So let's see if anyone can take a guess at where rates are at right now on a 30-year. And I'm going to actually throw something else out there as well on a 15-year, just kind of roughly. Is anyone willing to take a guess? Or is everyone scared because the market's been all over the place?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Where are interest rates today in today's market, just roughly, on a 30-year and a 15?
6.5.
Okay, and on a 15-year?
Higher fives, 6.
So actually, and I'm glad you said what you said. So 30-year rates are around 6.2. Here's something that we've seen again, right? We haven't seen this in a while. Conventional interest rates are around 6.2, right? Sumati said 6.5. That's good. 15-year fixed conventional rates are around 5.25. Mathematically speaking, right? If you bought with a 15-year rate, you'd be making an incredible, you'd have an incredible opportunity to actually be debt-free and own your mortgage free and clear in 15 years. But interestingly, what I'm also seeing is something that we've seen before. When the markets continue to increase, these are the times where government will subsidize rates. And so right now, FHA rates are between 1/4 to 1/2 point lower than conventional rates. Now, that doesn't mean that people's payment will be lower, because what does FHA have that doesn't go away that conventional has but does go away? Let's see if anyone can take a guess at that.
Oh,
Private mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
That's right.
PMI.
That's right. So you notice I said they both have it, right? They both have it. Mortgage insurance for a FHA loan is a particular percentage, and it's basically there for the life of a loan. Mortgage insurance for a conventional loan is 100% tied to a combination of credit score and debt to income. And it goes away over time through the combination of paying your mortgage down and or appreciation. The mortgage insurance on the conventional rate goes away, where the mortgage insurance on the FHA rate will never go away unless you sell or refinance the property. So it's an important distinction to have, because unfortunately, you know what, people chase rate, right? And in that scenario, I can tell you that an interest rate that is 1/2 point lower but has MI, as opposed to an interest rate that's 1/2 point higher but has a lower mortgage insurance factor, the payment's going to come out to be about the same. Now, over time, over the life of the loan, you will pay more on a higher rate, of course. But on the higher rate, at least you get a deduction, whereas in the mortgage insurance, you get nothing, right? You have mortgage insurance, you're simply paying for it. So it just doesn't go away ever. So tell me what you guys are hearing. I know Frank's going to talk about contracts, and one of the tie-ins today for contracts should be your interest rate, right? And I'm glad that Sumati said that the rate's 6.5, because typically we like to always quote 1/4 point to 1/2 point higher than where the rate really is, for no other reason than to protect people against those sudden increases, right? To not max them out up front, because you say, hey, you know what, at this lower rate, you qualify for, more home, and then the rate goes up, you've taken them shopping, and all of a sudden they absolutely don't qualify at all. So they're just things to look out for, to be cautious of. So what are you guys seeing? What type of feedback, now that we're in, we've completed the first full month of the year, what type of feedback or sentiment are you getting from buyers right now?
So, and that was one of the questions I even wanted to ask, like, how would you address this? So it's not necessarily about retail or a housing market crashing or anything, but there is expectation that the market will crash. It's not
Who's setting those
necessarily that
expectations?
sorry, what's that?
Who's setting those expectations?
It's a general conversation, and I was thinking maybe I should ask this: how are people approaching, when something like this comes up? So it's not about anybody's expecting housing market to crash like in 2008 or 9 or 10. And it's not that they're expecting, but with inflation, it looks like it might settle, but with all the layoffs that's happening, with all, so the whole temperature in a whole, in an essence, say feels like, hey, wait it out this year, things are going to mellow down and the prices will come down. They're already coming down, they'll come down further. Same thing will happen with interest rates. They're not, even though it's the expectation is not that it'll go back to 3 or 4%, even then they're like, let the prices drop. It's not necessarily about the interest rate, but the market as a whole. Something else can happen, a recession can happen. It could be different reasons, but that is all could impact the housing market, which might pull down the prices. At that point, you're like, yeah, it's not like 2018, but I'm not here to predict anything. I can't say, oh, the market is not going to crash, maybe not, So I was just curious, how are others, taking that discussion forward? And for us, it's not just about talking about the market, it's also about how you are able to, turn the tables, like, what? You might want to think about buying. If you're thinking about buying, just don't delay it. It might be a good price. How do you create that hook in a conversation instead of just sounding maybe, maybe not, that kind of a opinion?
It's actually a great question. You have touched on a ton of really good items within that conversation. But before I answer, I would like to hear from 2 or 3 of your peers as to how you would handle that. All that information you just threw out there, the combination of layoffs, of interest rate, of what's happening right now, kind of what people are, I'll say it, expecting / hoping for, right? Because the truth is, at the end of the day, everyone's kind of hoping that values go down a little bit, right?
Well, to tag to that, I've been reading articles that they think the Armageddon's happening in realty, and specifically to not that issue, but also because of the commission's changes in the RPA, where it kind of foresees in the future that maybe buyers agents are going to be replaced and it'll be more dual agencies with the sellers. That's kind of what I've been reading on different articles recently. And I think that it tags into just the uncertainty of the market itself, and on our side as agents, like, I don't know, it seems like they might just, like obsolete the buyer side, because there's just so many realtors out there with licensing, and that would kind of, filter that to not to have so many people licensed.
Okay, good. What else are the rest of the peers thinking or hearing or sensing that is happening in the market?
I've been hearing that all of this will go down in the third quarter, and we'll see lots and lots of activity in the market. Everyone's hoping, mortgage-wise, that everything will lower by the third quarter, and we'll just have normal activity. So I guess they're thinking the market's going to be buyer's market.
Okay, all right. What else? I'm taking everything you guys are saying because I'm going to touch on all of it. What else are you hearing or seeing or sensing or even reading? There has to be one more brave soul that's willing to step out and say something.
while we are waiting, there's a lot of talks about the market is going to crash. It's going to be a, if you're listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad, or these people who are always encouraging you to get into the market, all of those predictions generally is about you're heading towards a crash, and it might be a good opportunity to get into the market in a different way, but then it's still saying the same thing.
Okay. All right. Let me touch on some highlights. Some of them I've spoken of before, some of them I haven't touched on, and some of them I'll kind of expand on. Is there an opportunity right now for values to continue going down? And yeah, you have to ask yourself, and if that were to happen, why? Right? And the opportunity, and I touched on it maybe 4 or 5 calls ago, the opportunity for values to go down right now is a direct function of the number of buyers that are out there, and the fact that you have a smaller pool of buyers that aren't basically throwing money, at offers by, going crazy amounts over list price, right? Or in those scenarios where someone lists something at a ridiculously low price, knowing damn well that it's going to go higher than that number, right? People are like, well, you know what? Let me be a little cautious and careful with my money and put it out there, but I'm still able, I'm still capable, I still have the ability to purchase something because I have solid employment. What are the sectors that are concerned in terms of solid employment right now? Tech is a sector that is concerned, right? I'll touch on Twitter. Twitter is an institution that prior to its acquisition recently was losing $4 million a day, right? There's no company in the world that it's sustainable to lose $4 million a day. So what did he do? He made a business decision to lay off a ton of people, right? And if you work for that organization, well, hey, guess what? You're not in the best position, right? And those were high salaries, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Meta, whether it's Google, all these companies have recognized that, well, we can't continue forever losing inordinate amounts of money relying strictly on advertising, because advertising has a message towards people to spend money. And all of a sudden, when inflation is running rampant out of control, you can't spend money. If you follow that cycle piece by piece by piece, you recognize that, oh, okay, I see. So if you're in certain parts of the country that rely heavily on tech, every assumption that you've made or every conversation that you've just brought up is completely accurate, that in those areas, values are more subject and more prone to go down. But they're not going down because the market's in trouble. They're going down because the behavior of the people that are in the market isn't the same as it used to be, right? These are actually all pretty high dollar salaries that people had working for these entities. And on top of that, they work from home. Majority of his organizations work from home. They don't even have to commute in. So there is a ripple effect there, into other communities, that you see. Will interest rates go up or go down? Right now, they've been on a downward trend, which we spoke about a few months ago. We expected that to happen. And in the next quarter, you expect them to go slightly up. By this summer, you expect them to stabilize again. And by next fall, they'll go down again. It is a natural progression and cycle, not just because, well, part of it is because it's leading into an election year. And so that's another piece that you see. Inflation hasn't been controlled yet, right? I mean, take a look at the cost of eggs, take a look at the cost of gas, take a look at a lot of consumables. Inflation has not gone down. It continues to go up. it is, you know, again, we saw interest rates stabilize. So we see that, right? So for people to say that, oh, I'm hoping that things go down, or even I'm expecting them to go down, there's a glimmer of truth in what they say, but you have to understand the why. And most people don't understand the why. They just go, well, you know, look, that's what it is. Nope, right now is a bad time. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make a statement. And quite frankly, honestly, there's a lot of things that I've planned for in life, you know, and that I've been prepared for, but I never imagined that I would buy or be involved in buying as much real estate personally and professionally as I have in the last year. I mean, it's, you know, I've made that statement before. We're in the midst of it. You know, we have acquired half a dozen buildings, half a dozen homes, and some multifamily assets in the last 12 months. You know, and it's because we're not afraid of this market. We're playing into what people are doing. We recognize that a lot of people are scared, and don't think that we haven't even made the statement, hey, we don't know what the future will bring. Some people say the values will go down. And if you're comfortable with the offer that we put in front of you today, right, that maybe somewhat adjusted for value. On the other hand, sometimes we've been told that, you know, why would you pay that amount for that building today? Because we have a different purpose for the building than the way it was being used, right? So whether it's residential or commercial, the story is the same, right? If you have the employment, if you have the income, if you have the assets to be able to buy today, there's nothing wrong with buying today. Will values go down tomorrow? That's always the case. You know, the biggest risk right now, right? So let's say the values go down, right? And you touched on it. You indicated that, you know what, we probably won't see rates go back in the 3s and 4s again. You won't. Not anytime soon. If it ever happens, it might happen in the next 10, 15 years. I don't think it will ever happen again. That doesn't mean that you can't get rates that are lower. If rates are in the low 6s and in the low 5s on 30-year loans and 15-year loans, you know, you can buy down those rates today to go to the low 5s and even the 4s. You can do it, but it's going to take some money to do it, right? And right now, frankly, I've seen a handful of sellers that aren't willing to entertain get this, they're not willing to entertain a price drop, but they're willing to entertain $20,000 assistance to buy someone's rate down to where they're in the low 4s. So again, you have to think and go beyond just what is on the surface and say, oh, well, you've got an experienced, right? You got an experienced agent. Or maybe your experience isn't that deep, but you're on a team that has that kind of experience. So you reach out to Frank and say, you know what, how could we best structure this deal today to make this work, to run the numbers, to make this work, you know, because my buyer is a strong buyer. My buyer's employment history, 10 years at the same place, 800 credit scores. You know, they've got money in the bank and retirement and everything else. Like, the story makes sense. Right now, it's not about the multiple offer situation. You're not getting into that for the most part. Right now, it's, to use Frank's terminology, can you get to the finish line? Can you close, right? Are you in a position where you can do that? You know, and right now, the person that you might look at a person that's in tech and go, yeah, I don't know, depending on how much money they're putting down. But you might look at a person that's in government. Has anyone seen, you know, I mean, government wages, you know, there's still a ton of unemployment, right? Because truth is, people don't want to work. I have a friend that has a business. He pays 25% over market in terms of wages. And it's still not enough because people are like, oh, well, I really want 4 weeks of vacation to start. 3 is not enough. Oh, I want a signing bonus because that company is willing to do a $10,000 signing bonus. I mean, there are a lot of dynamics that make it honestly uncomfortable for business owners to run businesses today, right? But that's something that unless you're a business owner that's looking to buy real estate, you don't have to worry that much about that. You just have to worry, do I work for an organization that is strong and stable enough that I'm not going to have to worry about my employment in the near future, right? And I think there's a ton of organizations out there that are still in that position. If you look around, look everywhere, practically every company that you know of says that they're hiring people. I mean, or do you guys see that all of a sudden companies are kind of pulling back and saying, yeah, we're not going to hire, we're going to do it with less people? Because you don't see that a whole lot. What you see right now is you see an economy that is held back. Its growth is actually held back because of inflation. The single biggest reason why the economy isn't growing right now is because of inflation. And the inflationary effects are a result of all the free money that was thrown out there from COVID up until honestly recently, because California just did another stimulus just a couple months ago, right? So you keep throwing free money out there, free money. I mean, whether anyone in this group ever saw it, I don't know, but I can tell you, I mean, I've never seen a free dollar. I have no idea what that is, and I'm thankful that I don't. But I'm also not in an industry that, relies on that or that had massive layoffs, right? In the last few years, our business in the real estate and finance side, honestly, has grown. And it grew because of demand, and it grew because of knowledge, and it grew because of experience, and then you put all those things together and we're able to better navigate. So yeah, in terms of whether the market will melt, it won't melt. Will it soften? I think it already has, but it depends on where you're at, right? For example, I now have dual residency between California and Arizona. The market in Arizona has softened, but I'll tell you what, where do you think Californians put their money? They put their money in Arizona, because even though it's softened, it's still on fire, relative to where it was even a few months ago. I mean, it's on fire. It's not going anywhere, because you can sell something in California, honestly, not in a good area. And that equity that you take that equity to Arizona, you're sitting pretty, Hey, you got to deal with 2.5 months of hellacious weather. But other than that, it's actually, it's a great place to be. So I'm enjoying the dual residency between California and Arizona. I still spend more of my time in California, but you're seeing the move, you've seen the migration. So you just have to understand the market that you're in. LA County, is it going to soften? No. Look at the population growth. Orange County, richest county in the state, is it going to soften? Not really. Look at population growth. San Diego, Riverside, a little bit. San Bernardino, a little bit. But it's not because the markets aren't good. It's because the employment in those two counties hasn't caught up yet. So the people that live in Riverside, San Bernardino County may be commuting to San Diego or Orange or LA County. And we all know people that have moved to those counties, and honestly, they've loved it. And we know others that have moved to those counties and absolutely hated it. Just said, what, it's just too far. It's too far for what we do, for working 12-hour shifts and having to commute back. So when you're engaging with people, in today's environment, I think the most important thing you can do is really look to understand what it is that they're telling you, and really customize, what is happening. I'm going to tell you, everything that you hear in the news and that you read, it's about shock value. I know, listen, I've been on radio, I've been on TV, I've done it all. And I can tell you that a lot of it is shock value. Sometimes I didn't know what the B-roll was that they were playing. And I'd speak regarding a story and they'd have this B-roll playing and I was blown away at what they were saying, you know, to make it seem like somehow I had a different position or a different point. Your consumer out there today is quote unquote terrified at buying a property, but anybody that's been through these cycles before, honestly, I'm just kind of looking and sitting back and go, okay, all right, I might not make an offer on everything, but it's a good time to accumulate some wealth, whether you're starting off or whether you're established. This actually is, funny enough, a good time to buy. So, any questions or comments thus far? Did I put everyone to sleep? Okay, Frank, come back. Everyone's asleep.
So.
I think you've got them in suspense. Any questions for Bill? Come on.
Ask me questions, guys. Listen, it's far better to ask me a question that's situational that I can, you know what, you might have a question. Trust me. If you ask me a question, I promise you 5 to 10 other people on the call have the same question, but they're scared to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. I'll answer the question and give you a situational reason why it may or may not make sense based on what you're being told. And I don't want to hijack the call because I know that what Frank is covering tonight, there's a ton to cover. So, I mean, I can lay low in the background and let Frank go into what he's going to go to and then step in because I actually do have the time tonight, Frank. It's not a big deal. I have the time tonight to stay on the call.
There's a question, hands raised. Is it Priya?
Yes. Hi, Frank.
Hello.
Hi. So my question of the RPA, I wanted to ask if somebody partners up with another realtor, but say that realtor does not write the RPA correctly, as in messes up the math, leaves out a few terms, and the offer is sent to the listing agent. Can the other realtor, if given a chance, write the offer correctly and then put themselves at first because, like, frankly, all trust and faith in the other realtor is gone. So you don't want to, give a bad impression. So is that possible?
Well, I mean, everything's adjustable, if let's say there's a lead on it and they're the agent of record for the buyer, but there's a co-buyer agent.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows, maybe there's been some error. These are things I like to have discussed and adjusted and fix. And even if you had to resubmit that same offer and fix everything and do it all over again, rather than adding addendums after acceptance, either way, for me, I'd prefer to fix it up front, clean it up, and then get it accepted and then take it to escrow. So that there's no confusion during the transaction at its inception, right when you start. There are errors made quite often. The most common I'm seeing right now are some pretty simple things. Let me share my screen real quick here. Okay. This is a common mistake that I'm seeing. Okay, on page 1 of the RPA, you'll see this area item 2B, confirmation, basically confirmation of agency relationship. Who is the seller's brokerage representing? Who's the buyer's brokerage representing? And you'll see these filled out, the name of the seller brokerage, the name of the selling agent, which is the buyer's agent. This is one of the areas that they still haven't cleaned up because a lot of the documents now say buyer's agent. This says seller's agent. This is correct. This is fixed right here. But they don't check these simple boxes to tell you who's representing who. So they'll have all the information of the brokerages, the agents, everything. They'll submit the offer. And I've had this happen a number of times. and we want to get going on things. So I'll go back and suggest to them, please resubmit it. I'm going to put it in front of the seller, but please resubmit it and check those boxes, or else what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to involve another document. It's called
Okay.
an AC. It's basically an agency confirmation document that, what do? It's just got this section right there and you check the boxes.
Mhm.
So I'd rather just go ahead and take care of it ahead of time before we get going, get cooking, and avoid any confusion and additional documents. Now, of course, in this digital world and digital signatures, it's not the biggest challenge in the world, but less
Mhm.
paperwork and less confusion and less loose ends are better. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I try to get things in order and fixed and repaired ahead of time, if at all possible. That goes along with page, let me go down here for you. Page 15 and 16 with sellers and buyers, but more so on the agents area.
Mhm.
I'd like to make sure that everything is completed in here,
Okay.
that the buyer's agent has all their accurate information, their DRE number, their brokerage DRE number. Of course, on my side, that my information is in here. And here's a key right here, and a lot of people miss this. When I'm listing a property and I'm sent an offer, if we're going to accept that offer, I do ask that agent not only complete that 2B area, but I
Okay.
ask them to complete this area as well, especially this email address right here.
Right.
Why do I
Okay.
do that? Because we have what's called a designated electronic delivery. Okay.
Okay.
If they do not put this email right here, and let's say that buyer and that buyer's agent, they get accepted, we open escrow, 2, 3, 4 days later, they fail to communicate, they don't put money in escrow, and you're sitting there wondering what's going on as a listing agent.
Mhm.
They got their offer accepted, they're not performing already.
Mhm.
You can actually send them a notice to perform. And if
Okay.
they do not perform in 48 hours, you can actually send them a cancellation and move on to the next buyer. If they were to come back and say, we didn't get it, as long as that email address is right here, then they've agreed that whatever email address they put here, as long as we can show we sent it to that email address, whether they respond and say received, or they call us or text us and say they got it, regardless, it's deemed delivered and you can move on.
That's amazing.
Okay. Well, a lot of folks miss this stuff. But that's why we do what we do on Monday nights, to point out the little things that can be big things. I had that happen recently. An agent claimed they didn't receive my notice to perform because that exact scenario happened. We opened escrow with a buyer. 3, 4 days later, I don't hear from the buyer's agent. I'm not receiving any kind of communication. Money's not in escrow. Escrow's reaching out to the buyer's agent, asking, we sent you the wire instruction. Where's the deposit? What's going on here? And I sent the notice to perform. Then I sent the cancellation, and then they reached out and they apologized for the lack of communication and said they're ready to go. I said, I've already delivered a notice to perform and a cancellation. They claimed they never got it, but because they put their email in there,
Right.
and I did call CAR, California Association of Realtors, and I did let them know step by step what I was doing and got their blessing to do it. So in the end, I did everything procedurally to protocol, and we were able to cancel on them. And there really wasn't much argument from them to try and force us to continue. These are some of the little things that can be a really big deal in a transaction, because I didn't want my seller to be held hostage by this buyer who wasn't performing. And if they were going to behave that same way the rest of the way, would be a stress on my seller, So, but going back to your question, yes, you can fix things. You can draft an addendum, correcting the math. You could ask them to resubmit There's any number of things you can do, but I do recommend knocking it out early, not just letting it go, letting it be, and dealing with addendums and corrections and revisions and all those along the way, because you just lose track, or it might open the door for someone to withdraw from the transaction and leave your seller hanging, or a seller leave a buyer hanging.
Absolutely. Thank
Alright.
you. So does that mean like the original buyer's agent, first agent can be changed to co-agent, and the co-agent can come back on and be the main buyer's agent?
They can. I mean, you've got to work it out between you two. If you're both buyer's agents and we're both going to be documented on it, it
Mhm.
really shouldn't matter who's first position or second position, as long as you're working together. It may be a bit of a different story if it's different brokerages. That I could see a
Mhm.
dilemma where one wants to be the lead and the primary and so forth, you know.
Okay. No, I'm just like really, I try to keep my paperwork straight, and that really bothered me. So many mistakes. So I was like, we're definitely going to lose this offer. It goes like that, but it had already gone like that. So I'm just thinking how I can fix it.
Well, if it is an agent at another brokerage, you're probably
Oh
better
no,
suited
it's
to.
EXP.
Oh,
It's
okay,
EXP.
okay.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, always, when something like that happens, go in and speak to an EXP broker. Get their blessing as well. This is what we want to do, and follow their guide. If they say, you know what, it sounds easy enough to redraft and resubmit, but we would prefer, for documentation's sake, to go ahead and just have an addendum or amend it and fix
Okay.
it that way. So it's on record that the mistake was made and then corrected. I would do how they advise you to do.
Okay.
But me, I'm talking from the perspective of, I've been doing this for a long time, and I say to myself, why complicate matters? Everybody is transparent and understands what we're doing here before we get started and make it official. Let's iron it out. Let's fix it so that we can run smooth from the start.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks
Let's
so
go to
much.
Now,
Misty,
Deborah-
Frank.
Okay,
Hello?
did Deborah miss their hand up first? I don't know.
Yeah.
Go
Um,
ahead.
Deborah,
Back to the
happy to have you in here,
purchase.
Deborah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Back to the purchase agreement. That's where your templates come in. You know, you get if you're the buyer's agent, you have all that stuff filled out ahead of time in your template. So you don't miss it.
Well,
And as far as the seller sides go, whatever works with your brain, put X's, write yourself a note, something so that it triggers you to go back and fill it out.
I completely agree with what you say, Deborah, there. That's why every new mentee that is assigned to me, one of the first things I do, and those of you who have worked with me in here before, one of the first things I do is I ask you for your Zip Forms login. I go in there and I create an RPA for an FHA buyer, a conventional buyer, a cash buyer. I create the templates ahead of time. I go through it with the agent on why I checked what box, why I put what language, and everything's there. From that point on, and this mistake isn't made either. These boxes are already checked. But from that point on, it's just a matter of you plugging in who the buyer is and what the address of the property is you're writing on, and then calculating the numbers. So yes, absolutely spot on, Deborah. Go in
Yeah,
there.
I also
create-
include some of the basic disclosures with the buyers,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
not just the purchase agreement.
Right.
And as far as Priya, it sounded like this happened after they got an accepted offer.
No, Deborah, they are still like, accepting other offers. So,
Okay,
the
so
offer-
they
yeah,
haven't decided. Okay.
yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, because that's the addendum is in addition to, but amendment is after an offer is accepted.
Yeah.
You're amending terms.
Yes.
Okay.
And so often I see that as an error. People continue with the addendums and it really should be an amendment.
Yes. Mhm.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
All right. I believe Misty had a question. Misty?
We may have lost her. I'm not quite sure. I don't see her on anymore.
Okay, no worry, no worry. Okay, Bill, you were gonna chime in on something?
No, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're very situational, that we answer people's questions, right? You know, listening's great, but if you can't ask the question, then how are you going to feel comfortable, you know, interviewing and guiding your buyer? You know,
Yes.
we have to get people to get comfortable in asking the question, right? There's you know, there aren't any dumb questions. Ask the question, because I'm sure that, like I said, you know, if there's 22 people on this call, I promise you 5 people have the same question in mind.
Yes, I know. There's that I call it shy anxiety.
Mhm.
Because they know they want to ask it, they just don't want to be the one to throw it out there and feel like, well, I don't want to sound absurd, I don't want to sound like an amateur, but you know what? This to me is just like a sport. This is practice. This is where we make our mistakes. This is where we ask the coach, or maybe clear things up. Am I supposed to be here or there? Where am I supposed to be? Because once it's game time, I need to know where I'm supposed to be now, because it's real, you know.
Right.
That's when there isn't a lot of room for error, if at all, no room for error.
So I'm hanging out listening. Let me know and I'll jump back in when I hear someone ask a question.
Right, right. Okay. So that said, there was a topic I touched on last week and the week before. We had this new section thrown in here, item 3G3. And I know it's still very confusing, even to some of the real estate attorneys out there that I've talked to this about this subject right here. It looks like right now that a federal judge or the federal courts has struck down the suit from the Department of Justice against NAR, which would have done a couple of things. The bigger thing would have been where it would have eliminated the requirement or the standard procedure of the listing agent to pay the buyer and listing agent's commission. And buyer would have to figure out, and buyer's agent would have to figure out where their compensation was going to come from. Of course, this item was put in here so that the buyer agent could ask the seller, along with submitting their offer, to pay the buyer's agent commission. It wasn't a standard procedure, you know, this is how it works. Seller pays for both sides. That was going to change the game here. There were resolutions being looked into. One of them is on the lending side, where the lenders would create a third assistance, basically, because, you know, we have down payment and closing cost assistance, and there would be buyer agent commission assistance. That, of course, would bump up the buyer's interest rate, because they would need to, if they couldn't come up with it on their own, they would have to borrow the money from the lender up front as well. So that was going to change things a while, but it appears that for now, it got struck down, because there was a binding agreement on this same matter a while back. Who knows how it was overlooked or not brought up now, but it was decided that that item could not be changed and dismissed. It was something that was in writing, and it was struck down. So are we safe for now? Probably. Will that last forever? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to appeal it or find another angle on that same discussion. Who knows? But that's why this area was put in here. And for now, and I'll keep you updated when I get more facts, it looks like that issue is not necessarily resolved, but on pause or at a halt right now. Okay, which is good for all agents, really, because, you know, most agents are going to work with buyers, because during most markets, a majority of markets, there are usually more buyers than there are listings, more buyers and sellers. So of course, agents tend to do more transactions on the buy side than the list side, unless you're really, really good at it and that's your thing. You're just good at getting listings and farming and so forth. Okay. Okay. So let's
Frank,
open. Yes.
Before you move on
Sure.
on that, if that's written in red, and my question is, it's gonna be removed, so then you'll have a contract with that, without that being there?
I don't think it's going to be removed because they put it in there. They put it in there for this year.
Well,
It was put in there in preparation for this transition to be made. Are they gonna yank it? I don't know. I don't think they are. I think they're gonna leave it in place as a just in case. Okay, I'll continue to ask the question. And I think you're probably gonna hear more about a revised or a simpler form of a buyer broker agreement on top of it as well. For those of you who don't use one, I don't use one myself, and a lot of agents don't, because the language in there can be a little scary to a buyer
Yes.
when they hear someone's going to pay me, whether you
Yes.
buy with me or someone else, that type of language. But these are all things for, that I think that's going to stay there. I do. As
Yeah,
a
the
just,
reason I'm asking that is it has to be a flag that it's something that you need to go by. Don't make a mistake and say that this is real and someone actually wants to adjust on that.
well, I think the word was for quite a while now that this was that legislation, policy was going to go through. And I was very surprised when a good friend of mine who's on top of things, he's with the what is it, the standards committee, and he's trying to get into forms and all, he's really into contracts and disclosures. And when he texted me like, guess what, you won't believe it, I was surprised, very surprised. But I'll keep everyone in tune with what's going on. If they're going to take it out, they're going to leave it in there. What other the shoe might drop. This is an ever-changing industry. It seems every year somebody finds an angle, and then we have to plug that hole. A change is made, a section is added, a page is added, multiple pages are added. Sometimes, like we just had the 6 pages a while back. Someone's always finding a way to break through the armor, and then we have to figure a way to build the fort back up again. That's just the way of our world. And of course, us being California, basically the lawsuit capital of the world, it's no wonder that we're always trying to find some way to stop the leak.
I guess
I believe Deborah. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, here's what I'm getting at. It's if it's not solid, it has not been put in a position where this is it, this is the way it's going to be, why print it? And then have at the end, oh, wait a minute, it's going to trial, we got to find out if it's okay to do so. So
well, see, the thing is it probably shouldn't have been printed unless it absolutely was made law, but
exactly.
it was in
My
preparation.
question.
It was in
My statement
preparation
is that.
of what many thought was going to happen. Like it was inevitable. And who knows, the decision made recently, who knows if it's going to take 2 years to appeal or or have an appeal next month and end up happening. We don't know, and I think that's what's the big confusion with the agents. And honestly, 90+% were absolutely unaware that this was even being discussed. That to me is the scarier thing, that agents aren't paying attention and getting more involved in policy changes that would greatly affect them. And there were even errors in this. I guess some people who were checking this box recently were finding a way or angling, saying that, well, I'm checking this box, I'm including the SPV form, and I'm going to ask for this much from the seller, and then the MLS says I get this much from the broker, so now I want double that much. And that was becoming a debate too. It was just creating a lot of confusion. And multiple car attorneys that I spoke to themselves were not very defined completely on this subject right here. Most of them were saying, it's a wait and see. We need to see what's going to happen here.
But it is possible, because every person is not the same, that could cause a ruckus by people saying, you know what, I can take advantage of it because it's already there.
Yeah.
And now they're going to go so far, then what? And then someone says, oh, no, you can't do that. Well,
Yeah.
who's saying you can't do that?
Right.
It's on paper.
This is probably the first time that I've seen something like this put in here in anticipation for such a very important issue, and then go the way it did. Me myself, I haven't experienced that in 20-something years. Actually, Deborah's been in the business for quite a while. How about you, Deborah? Have you seen something like this, or what have you heard? Because I know that you're very in tune with what's going on policy-wise in our industry. I lose you, Deborah?
Well, Frank, Car Legal did a whole thing on this, I think a week ago with their car attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it's on video actually, in the legal section of the car.
Mm-hmm.
And they went over the buyer broker agreement, and then they tapped into this portion of this section here as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to, I don't know if you heard the video, but it's good to review it, only because I have to go through it a couple times to understand what all is happening. And they also included those additional forms,
Right.
the SPBB form and additional forms that I had no idea was taking place. But, I've been following what's been happening policy, on the policy side, and it's just been overall confusing and I could see why a lot of agents are not in tune, is because when it's settled, I guess, then they'll be more in tune, but it is quite a bit, there's a lot of confusion on it.
There is, and to me, and I mentioned this before, I have the utmost highest respect for our legal oversight folks there, but this is the one subject really where I think I got more undefined conversations where there was just very much like, you know what, let's see how it plays out. And literally on no other subject did I get more of that, let's see how it plays out, than this right here. And this is a major one, right, Deborah? Because this is not just state of California. We're talking on a national level, Department of Justice going at National Association of Realtors, not just CAR, but everyone. in the
Everyone.
country.
Yeah.
Everyone, all, and saying this is the way it's going to be from now on. That would reshape our industry, really, So, and if anything, myself, my opinion is sometimes folks that are really smart folks out there are unintended consequences. And from what I know, one of the reasons for the push on that policy was home prices are too high. Why are home prices so high? Well, one of the reasons home prices are so high is because the seller's got to pay so much commission that's reflected into the home sale price. Well, we need to stop that. So how do we do that? We don't, let's make it so that that seller doesn't have to pay so much of a commission to both sides. Okay, well, here's the thing. If you think that the people being affected out there are those who are razor thin on becoming homeowners because they don't have 20%, 10, 5% down, they have to go FHA, their credit's not stellar. Don't you think this in a reverse effect affects those buyers even more so? Where are they going to come up with the buyer's agent's compensation so that they can have a buyer's agent only represent them and their interest? Or is it going to push buyers to go to listing agents so that the listing agent can double end because that's the only way for the buyer to get accepted?
Right.
So there could be unintended consequences that I think affect the buyer that these smart people feel that they're trying to protect, and hurts them more than it helps them. That's how I feel about it.
And lowered purchase prices because the buyer's going to have to come out of pocket.
Yeah.
Or if we do get those crazy loans to help them with the commission.
There you go,
Either
Deborah.
way,
You
way,
there. What happens
gonna
with those
affect the
what happens with those creative loans? People don't always manage them well, and they get themselves into bigger trouble. you know,
Mhm.
it happened. We've seen it happen, right?
Right.
And then people become helpless to it. And next thing you know, crash, crash, crash. Which, by the way, I did post in the chat box there, an article I sent out a few days ago about statistics and some misinformation that happens out there in our market. You know, of course, in this world of social media and journalism and so forth, it can drive folks into, I think, an osmosis of fear myself. And I've said it before, if you don't want a market to crash, stop saying it's going to crash, because if you look at the rates pre-COVID as to where they are now, they're not too far off. Yeah, they are higher, but they're not too far higher. You'd think that we are up 4 points higher than where we were pre-COVID. We're not. We're about a point. Maybe for someone with stellar credit and great debt to income ratios, maybe less than a point. It's not too much higher, but because the talk is so negative, it creates it freezes people in fear. They don't bother to go out and find the facts, because we're living in a world where people believe that the facts are just coming to me. I don't have to go and look into it. I'm just believing what I'm told, and that's it. You know.
So
It's a
Frank,
different world.
on the ones that, you know, the REOs like the HUDs and things of that sort, they require I mean, that's very similar to what's happening here, right? With the buyer's premium, where the buyer pays for that buyer's agent's premium through that process. So I don't know, I guess, I mean, we see it with the REOs on the HUD especially, and with auctions as well.
Yeah, those are, you know, those are unique opportunities where these homes are, well, not necessarily on the REO side. On the auction, yes. On the HUD, yes, and so forth. But back when I was doing a lot of REOs, the listing agents weren't getting paid as much as the buyer's agent, because the sellers or the asset managers were giving more commission to the buy side to entice, of course, buyer's agents to bring their buyers over. And the listing agents weren't making as much. But in an era during that time where if you weren't an REO agent getting fed listings from the banks, you were probably having a difficult time out there doing business, because it was hard to get a traditional standard listing where a seller was going to sell and make a profit, because the values had declined so much that they were lucky if they broke even, if not had to go under, which we eventually called a short sale. Okay. So different era though, and a different trigger. Because for those of you who have been in the industry, maybe around the 20-year mark, maybe a little less, we had these layered loans. And some of you who didn't experience it, listen to this. So imagine you going to a lender and saying, hey, I want to be a homeowner, but I don't have 20% down. And the lender saying, that's okay, you don't have to put anything down. What? Nothing down? Yeah, 100% finance. Oh, on top of it, Mr. or Mrs. Lender, my credit's not very good at all. What is it? 580. Oh, that's fine. Not a problem. Really? Yeah. And on top of it, we'll give you down payment assistance, closing cost assistance. And on top of it, you don't even have to get qualified for so much of a home based on your standard tax returns. Do you do any odd jobs, make money on the side, whatever it is? Okay, then we'll qualify you on that high number based on your overall deposits to your bank account. So those folks who really, if you had a pulse, you were getting a loan. The standards were just not standards at all. So folks who rightfully wouldn't get into a traditional 30-year fixed loan and have to meet certain conditions of credit and income and all those things didn't have to. So of course people were jumping into the pool because the water was warm. And folks who probably wouldn't buy homes in today's market or a normal market were jumping in. But guess what? Those loans had a catch. If they were interest only, they were a 5-year interest only, they're a 7-year interest only or whatever, but you were on the clock. And the thinking was, we're going to give you a sweetheart low rate for 5 years or whatever it was. And during that time, you need to be saving money, because before that last granule of sand hits on year 5, you need to refinance out of that into a conventional 30-year mortgage and move on that way. Well, folks weren't doing that. They weren't saving. They weren't preparing. They were sitting back on it. Time ran out. And next thing you know, their $1,700 a month payment went to $3,200, and they couldn't do it. And folks started getting foreclosed on in mass. It was just a tidal wave. And even if you could pay your mortgage and you had solid employment and all those things, it didn't matter. As the housing market was getting saturated with foreclosures, everybody was underbidding the next seller, and those values were going down and down and down and down. So it didn't matter if you were making good on your mortgage, you were losing just as much home value as anybody else on the block. It was a wild ride. And if you weren't connected with the banks and doing REOs, it was tough for you to, get a listing with a seller telling them, hey, you paid $500,000 for your home and you're paying your mortgage and you're good, but it's worth $350 now. Do you want to sell it? You can't. You're stuck, So it was an interesting world. Very interesting world. Okay. All right. Any other questions here? Let's just open up the forum. We don't have to talk about anything specific. I'm not going to break out a syllabus and just focus on one thing or the other. Like Bill said, I want to talk about the things and the questions that you have most important. Of course, I usually start off with the things that are affecting us here today and the trends that I'm seeing from the agents that I'm working with weekly on what's popping up and what's happening and what's really sticking out. But this was
Right.
the most important item of the week. Yes.
Do you anticipate that they'll take that section out now that it's on hiatus? On
I
hold?
don't know. I haven't talked to car counsel for probably a week plus now. So I'm going to ask.
Yeah, usually they do it every June, July, midsummer, early summer.
Yeah, sometimes they'll do like a
But-
mid.
Yeah.
That's why, yeah.
Frank,
good.
is the court case still going on? Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I read an article. It's still going on, right?
Well, I guess they say they're going to appeal it, but I don't know. For those of you who are familiar with the laws, well, it is the Department of Justice. I'd imagine they could do an appeal faster than most people, but I'm not an attorney, but sometimes you hear about an appeal taking another year or two before they get back to it again.
Yeah, I don't think
know.
they'll take it out until that's more official, right? If they even take it out.
I don't know.
Yeah. What also got me is that they put this in, the purchase agreement took effect, what was the 19th of December, but yet they did not change the listing agreement to coincide information wise. So they probably already had issues with that where.
Yeah.
So you didn't tell me about this. And
Yeah.
they're going to see it when they see the purchase agreement.
Right.
So
And that's actually.
Did anybody call Carl? Because I know you gave us a homework.
I was going to say, I gave some homework. I
didn't have a chance, but I'm curious if anybody did. I'll be more than happy to do it this week, but yeah.
I'm going to re-up that homework for extra credit. Everybody call Carr and get their opinion. Like I said, prior to about a week ago, I talked to multiple Carr Legal, and none of them really wanted to really own this and say, this is exactly how it is. It was very, a lot of them weren't comfortable or I'm not going to say they were opinionated, but they weren't really all jazzed about this at all, So let's find out. let's work together. I am going to call tomorrow. I know I wasn't giving myself the homework. I wanted everybody else to, but I'm going to check too, because I just got the news about the dismissal of it, or at least it not going through for the moment, just a few days before the weekend. So let's see what happens. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But let's work together as a unit here to figure out what's going on and not be like the other 99% that are absolutely clueless and unaware until it strikes, and then they're scrambling. I don't like to be in that situation, and I'd hope to help you not be in that situation too. Okay, but you're right, Deborah. There's nothing in there about in the listing agreement. And one of the last car attorneys I talked to, he says, when you stop seeing commission being announced in the MLS, this is the direction you have to go if you want to get paid, basically. You know, but so until that stops happening, he said, don't check the box, don't do nothing. It's just there in case. Proceed forward. That's what I was told. You know, and that's a weird answer to get. I'm like, whoa, no one was really concise and clear and absolute about it. So,
Well, they're inconsistent because the listing agreement will state the buyer's agent is going to get X amount
yeah,
dollar or percentage. So they're contradicting. There's a possibility of them contradicting. And in the MLS, you're required to put something down, even if it's $1.
Mhm.
And that's another place that things have not updated to coincide. So and why would they? Because it, like you said, it wasn't a done deal yet.
Yeah. It may have been a knee-jerk reaction to mentally prepare people ahead of time to get used to it. But myself, I probably would have had a lot of announcements about it. I probably would have had trainers go to each board and maybe even require people to show up and get some kind of credit for showing up, obviously, like we have with this implicit bias training coming up, which, by the way, for those of you who have not fulfilled that implicit bias requirement at our Long Beach office this Thursday at 1 p.m., we are having that training here. And by showing up for 2 hours, you get credit for completion of it. So I'll go ahead and send the flyer out.
That's required by EXP or by whom?
No, by a CAR.
Oh,
Yeah.
CAR. Okay.
Okay. Okay. It will be on Zoom, but I need to check to see if they give credit only in person or not. Yeah. Okay.
Now, there is a form, the ABCD form, that's part of the buyer broker, but it separates the compensation of the listing agent and the buyer's agent that we're supposed to submit or provide as part of the RPA, to my
Mhm.
understanding. Is that correct?
Well, some do send the cooperating broker agreement
No,
laying
but-
out exactly whatever it says on the MLS, but it's rare that, I mean, I've had multiple listings in the past year, and I don't think one time anybody sent anything except the RPA and are counting on getting their commission based on what's been advertised on the MLS.
Oh, no, this is a new change with the BRE. It's the ABCD form. And it says form that identifies listing agents' compensation as well as the buyer's compensation. And it says that we need to submit it with the RPA.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was actually the other part of this, besides the seller not giving transparency on what the listing agent compensation is.
Hmm.
But I believe both of those were a bundle, and both of those were struck down from what I know.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know what, to me, I've had it happen before. Some escrow companies, you'll experience that they'll send you the commission instruction, and the commission instruction will just show what your brokerage is getting.
Mhm.
I've received them where it shows what each brokerage is getting.
Right. Mhm.
Not always, sometimes, And
Mhm.
yeah, I have, well, sometimes I've seen like, okay, I'm getting 2 and they're getting 4.
Mhm.
Is it more challenging being a listing agent? There's more liability, there's disclosure, there's open house, marketing, a lot of duties on that listing side, and a lot of accountability and liability, of course. Is it 2% more than me driving around, showing property, writing an offer, going to inspections, and taking care of my client? I don't know. It'd be nice to have, things fair across the board. They get 3, I get 3. Doesn't always happen. But hey, I'll take the 2% rather than from the seller, rather than me having to explain to my buyer why they have to pay for it.
Mhm.
Yeah, could have been a different world. We came close to it, but we'll get through it. We will adapt and adjust. We saw the same thing happen where the sky was falling when the HUD, which we call the CD now, was taken out of the hands of escrow. That was a calculation of escrow fees, lender fees, all those numbers, and put in the hands of the lender, where they had to calculate all the numbers. Folks were saying, oh, 30-day escrows are going to take 45 and 60 days and the world's falling apart and so forth. Well, what happened? Lenders just had to do a little more work, move a little faster, be a little clearer, of course, be more specific on the numbers, and follow through, and have buyers go and see the same numbers they saw in the beginning and the end when they're signing their loan documents. The world didn't fall apart, and we went back to having 30-day or less closes all these years. Who knows if there would have been that kind of issue if this other policy had gone through, but it didn't for the moment. Okay. All right. More questions?
And make sure you review that CD with your buyer and make sure the numbers are correct.
Yes, absolutely. Because
Seriously.
buyers were going to the table basically, and the reason that they created that system there was because buyers were shown estimates on the front end, and then 30 days later or 20 something days later, when they go to sign their loan docs, they'd see that their interest rate was 3/4 points higher, their payment was $300 and something higher, and all these things. And believe it or not, buyers, some of them just figured, well, I'm here, we're ready to sign, let's do it. And that's not right. So the CD is given ahead of time to the buyers as a disclosure up front, and the buyer gets a chance or a seasoning period to look it over, match it up, make sure it's, what they were promised or close to it, and make a decision whether they accept it or not. And then after they sign it and they agree to it, then the loan docs are drafted, instead of just showing up and signing whatever's in front of you, which I completely agree is not fair, Okay.
Yeah, and credits. I actually recently closed on a property where the lender forgot the seller's credit, $4,000 seller's credit,
Right.
and didn't enter one of the buyer's names, so it all had to be corrected.
Wow. Okay. Well, what can we say? People drop the ball. And Deborah brings up a good point. You as the agent, whether you're the agent for the buyer, the agent for the seller, don't expect everyone to perform at their highest level and actually do their job. Okay. Not necessarily that you have to intrude or step into someone else's lane, but be very observant and very aware of your client. It's your fiduciary duty to take care of them to the utmost of your ability. And even though we may not interpret loan documents and lender stuff or escrow stuff, you need to have a basic overall knowledge so that when you see something that raises a flag, you do help your buyer to find the answer, to research and figure out what's going on, and make sure that things are on the level, on the up, before they start signing things away and signing things off. And of course, one of the most important things are, you know, their rate. Is the number right? Is that what they were promised or close to it? Because once you sign on that and that deed is transferred to you, it's your deal. You can't save your receipt and walk to the return line and say, hey, I want to give it back. It's yours now. Very important. So be the quarterback. Be involved with everyone politely and professionally, but don't just sit back and expect everyone else to just do their job to their maximum ability. You gotta be the balance person. You gotta check up, ask questions, protect your client on either side.
And let your buyer know that you're not going to get a copy of that CD automatically. So when they receive it, have them forward it to you.
Yeah.
Give you opportunity to review it for errors and content.
Mhm. Yeah, have them, I mean, one of the simplest ways is, I mean, match it up with initial settlement statement or financial that you get in the beginning. Does it look like it's making sense? One of the things that will throw buyers off though is, let's say they get approved, right? And then they're out shopping. And then later on, they get another estimate and the rate is higher and they're upset. Well, here's the thing. The lender's usually not going to lock the rate until the buyer gets accepted on a contract. So if the rate did go up or down during that time, that's what it is. I mean, sometimes the lender can help out by, you know, giving up some of their commission or maybe a buy down or something like that. But those things do change. But once you're locked in and accepted, those numbers should be exact or close to exact from the beginning of the acceptance to the end, depending. If the buyer needed assistance along the way, that rate's going to go up. That assistance isn't free. It's reflected in a higher rate, you know. So, but you're right, Deborah, absolutely be involved. We're not the lenders, but we should know enough about it. And by the way, we're going to have a lender come in next Wednesday here to the office. We're going to have a lunch and learn next Wednesday. I'll go ahead and get the flyer out before the weekend here at a Long Beach office as well, to talk about some of the basics of mortgage. You know, what's the difference between FHA, conventional, why rates go up and down, the cost of assistance programs and things like that. Just some basic things. Remember, we're not licensed to be lenders. Some of you are licensed. But for the most part, if you're a realtor or a salesperson license only, let's try and stick to that, but have enough knowledge to see when things just don't make sense and guide your buyers to ask those questions and get the answers before they move forward and start signing stuff. Okay. All right. It is 9:23. I think we've had a pretty good meeting of the minds tonight. And let's see, is there another question here? Okay, yes, absolutely. Alton, everyone will always be invited. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. Starting in February too, it's gonna pick up a little more pace. And I've got some things that are kind of, I'm not gonna say unorthodox, but different than some of the other trainings that you might see. Like I've got professional acting coach coming in, and then we might even have some field trips to his acting studio. I'm working on getting some NLP, neuro-linguistic programming specialists coming in, self-defense, all kinds of things that maybe are outside of the real estate spectrum, but are still part of life and have everything to do with your life as a realtor, you know. So got some cool stuff on the horizon here at the Long Beach office. All right. Okay. Well, we are going to call it an evening. Do remember, tomorrow is Tech Tuesday with Coach Kane, and then Wednesday is Valuation Wednesday with Coach Renee. And I'll go ahead and get that flyer out for this coming Thursday. So if you want to go ahead and take care of your implicit bias training hours, instead of doing a bunch more hours, come in for 2 hours. And I'll check on also tomorrow whether you can get credit for attending the Zoom or it has to be in person. I'm pretty sure it's going to have to be in person. but well worth it. So you don't have to do it online or do many more hours to get that completed. So that said, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. Do remember tomorrow, Tech Tuesday, we'll send that invite out within the next 24 hours. And then on Wednesday. Oh, one more thing, this Saturday, you should get the invite either tomorrow or Wednesday. This Saturday, we're planning to have a contracts, comping, and coffee here at the Long Beach office also from 10 a.m. to noon. And we're also going to have a little bit of mortgage talk with one of our local lenders who's coming in, and they're going to bring coffee, donuts, that stuff. And that will be this Saturday from 10 to noon. I'm sorry for not announcing it earlier. It should be on Zoom also, but try and come in person if you can. It is the weekend, and getting, around your fellow agents and mingling and networking could do you all the good in the world there. All right. So everyone have a fantastic night. I thank you so much. And until Monday, we'll see each other again, and have a great night. Bye-bye.